Hi, Karl de Leeuw here. How to protect your child from paedophilia. At the end of 2002, I was playing with my two daughters. They were 6 and 3 at the time. My eldest daughter out of the blue said, "Daddy, is it true that I have two daddies?" And those words opened up a Pandora box that I will discuss next. Before I start, however, just two quick provisos. Number one, Kabbalah.com says that if your intentions are good, it is all okay. Kabbalah.com is the secret of the Old Testament via the Zohar. Number two, just want to say to my family that if I can stop one child from being abused, this is worthwhile, and I'm sorry if this is upsetting. More and more people are working from home due to COVID, and working from home is now commonplace. This, in my view, will even increase child abuse. This chat is about what I've learned since 2003 about the topic, and the hope is that at least it will be thought-provoking for a discussion to start. Writing about how a paedophile can abuse a child is not seen to be a good thing, but I disagree. Not only do we need to openly teach parents how it takes place, but in a soft way teach kids at school. I know I will be heavily criticized for saying this, but again, if one child can be stopped from being abused, it is worth it. Einstein said that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. We have not even been close to being able to stop child abuse, and in my view, it is time for us to change tack. In our chat, I'm going to use two examples of what happened to my family and me as case studies. There are no graphic issues, and I'm discussing things regarding stopping abuse before it happens. The first is what happened to my two daughters, and the second is what happened to my son at Scouts. As mentioned before, in late 2002, I was playing with my two daughters, and my eldest daughter out of the blue said, "Daddy, is it true that I have two daddies?" This unlocked a series of events that I cannot fully discuss, but I will give you some clues as to what happened. It turns out that the second daddy was my two daughters' best friend's dad. So both my daughters' two best friends' dad. So at the end of 2002, I packed in my chartered quantity surveying job. I was a partner in a firm in London in the UK. For those in the non-Commonwealth countries, this is like an accountant in the building industry. I started working from home, and I also started expanding my little property portfolio that I could do from home. The basement to my two daughters' best friend's daddy. Until then, I'd never visited this guy's house, but soon I decided to do so. What I discovered is that he has a sunken type of basement that was kind of a play area, not a basement but semi-basement and slightly dark. I cannot remember exactly how I approached my eldest daughter, but I then found out that when my eldest daughter played at this guy and his wife's house, sometimes he played with his daughter and my daughter in the sunken basement area. Now you will immediately say that this on its own does not mean anything, and that there is nothing going on, but then the clues keep on coming. The next thing was my eldest daughter's school. I took turns with my then wife to take the kids to school. One day, after arriving at school, I found myself chatting to this guy with his eldest daughter and my eldest daughter. The next thing, his eldest daughter started running around him, and every time she passed her father's front private parts, she tapped him on his private parts. This was in front of lots of parents and their kids waiting in the playground in a small area for the school bell to ring for the start of school. What this guy was doing was in front of the whole school, not only grooming my eldest daughter, but everyone watching. What happened next was that drawings were sent to us via my eldest daughter of drawings that this guy's daughter drew. It was as if they were sending these drawings to us on purpose. These drawings depicted things that could be seen as a guy's private parts. So you might say yes, but this is not much. What I want to say to parents is trust your instinct. Don't listen to your mind. Listen to what your gut says. Even if you're wrong, it is still worth it. My view is that even if your wife / partner is not in agreement, you have no choice but to go with your gut. People will see you as being strange, but we need to change things, and change is not easy to accept. My view is that kids' safety comes before marriage. The final straw was on my eldest daughter's birthday. We had the birthday at our house. In any event, after all others left, the only people that stayed on were this guy and his wife, plus 2 daughters and another lady, and of course my family. So we were sitting in our large-sized lounge with the adults sitting on the sofas and the kids running around in the lounge, when this guy's eldest daughter comes behind me as I'm sitting on the sofa, and in front of everyone starts massaging my back. This was the final straw, and I went upstairs to my desk. I was working from home, and phoned the person who we bought the house from. I knew he was involved in running 2 homes for paedophiles fresh from prison to help them before they go back into the community. What the person proposed is that we visit him and his wife that weekend to discuss it. He was on the south coast of the UK. During our visit, after discussing the above and the finer details, he said that in his view, we should contact social services. At this point, it was the end of 2003. I first contacted New Scotland Yard's paedophile unit, and they contacted social services that then contacted me. We asked social services not to discuss things with this guy and his wife, and of course they did the opposite. We went on holiday in South Africa that December, and my eldest brother and his wife proposed that we see one of South Africa's foremost child psychologists. He played with both my daughters and did drawings with them, and then gave me advice that you might agree with or not, that this is what happened. The psychologist recommended to us that on my return to the UK, I approach this guy and say to him that if he ever gets close to my family, I will rip his head off. So armed with this advice, the first day back at school in 2004, I followed the guy on my bicycle. We both cycled. This was not planned, but by the time I caught up with him, we were passing through a cemetery when I gave this pre-rehearsed above-mentioned sentence. I threw in a few swear words as well. To my surprise, this guy fell off his bicycle. I never touched him, and in the following few days I heard that he said I molested him. That was not the case physically, but yes, verbally. In hindsight, would I do this again? Of course not. But this is what transpired, and I believe in speaking the truth. Back to social services. I praise the work that social services do, but they are completely underpaid and under-resourced. And that is one of the reasons why we, as parents, need to take things into our own hands. As mentioned before, social services contacted this guy and his wife, and I'm not sure what they said because I refused to allow my children to have any contact with his daughters other than at school. Now this is where things get tough. If the story was an issue, it is nothing compared to my discussions with my then wife. My ex is an amazing lady and likes to see the best in all people. So this caused huge issues, but she followed what was transpiring and the advice given, and I thank her for that. At that point in 2004, my little property portfolio was growing, and the last thing I wanted was to be sued. So I contacted a friend of mine who was a lawyer and asked him for the names of the top 3 media lawyers in the UK. I then contacted them for quotes for a consultation. I went for the lowest fee and received advice. This was back in 2004. So I'm not sure if the advice is still so. The advice was that we can discuss what transpired in detail with 3 other families and then ask them not to speak to anyone else in case they got sued. So just to clarify, we could speak to my eldest daughter's friends' parents who we were closest to. What this meant is that no one, including ourselves, could speak to anyone about what transpired. And no doubt the guy and his wife could have gone to town in spreading false information. We just did not know. But the upshot of it all is that the pressure got too much and we decided to move home. Because my ex is from Ireland, it became a natural decision to move to Ireland. I'm not an expert in this field, as I was not abused in this lifetime. I'm told by the spirit world that I was abused in one of my previous recent incarnations in Ireland, and that must be why I could think the way a paedophile thinks, having experienced it in a previous lifetime. The only way forward that I can think of is to have cameras in your and your kids' friends' houses that can be seen by all at any time. This is a big step, but unless you start by doing it yourself and asking other parents to do the same, we cannot move forward. This is my proposal. There might be much better, smarter options, but I cannot think of any at this point. As mentioned before, we moved to Dublin, Ireland, and the next example is my son going to Scouts. But just some background first. When moving to Dublin in April 2005, we were in the Celtic Tiger years, where property prices were going up daily and the banks could not stop lending. So we bought a property opposite my kids' primary school to have an address to get into the school. It was a derelict house, and we got planning for a 4-story fancy house. I started owner building it, but then the US subprime crisis hit us in August 2007 and my bank pulled the plug. I was then forced to sell the building site as we were halfway through construction and pumped my own money into it to get it weathertight. The house was sold at auction about 3 years later by the bank, and I sat with a €2 million loan. Property prices in Dublin in the luxury areas went down 80% in value. The reason for telling my sob story about losing all is that it was during this time that my son started going to Scouts. My marriage was breaking down for the financial reasons discussed, but also 4 more points, with one being about child safety and my obsession with it. So when my son started going to Scouts in Dublin, Ireland, I deliberately did not want to take him to Scouts. However, say about 6 months into my son being at Scouts, one day my then wife dropped him off at our house whilst I was there, and she went on doing something else. I was alone with my son at home in our rented house. I asked my son how Scouts was, and he said great, and said that they were taught a song called "This Little Light of Mine." I said, okay, sounds interesting, please sing it to me. So he did, and when he got to a particular point, he bent forward and wiggled his bum. I asked him to sing the song again, and exactly at the same time in the song, he bent forward and wiggled his bum. Now, as you can imagine, the last thing I wanted was to intervene in my son's Scouts. Number one, I've learnt a lot from the UK experience with my daughters and knew this could be grooming. Number two, my marriage was breaking up and I knew that if I was going to pursue matters, that this could be the final straw amongst 5 things happening simultaneously. In any event, my son then said to me, what they do is sing the song, "This Little Light of Mine," in the church next to the Scouts Hall, and he has a carved little light made out of wood. He went upstairs to fetch it. Here is the picture of it. I then took this picture and emailed it to the person who was involved with homes for paedophiles that advised us in the UK. And his view was that it could be construed as a man's private parts, but then again, maybe not. At some point, I asked my ex to arrange a meeting with the Scouts leaders, and to her credit, she did. I placed a tape recorder on top of the table and asked the 2 Scouts leaders if they were fine with it, and they said no problem. In our meeting, I basically just discussed what I mentioned, but also a few smaller things. I then took the tape recording and sent it to Scouting Ireland Child Protection Unit, and got a phone call back from a guy asking me in a rough voice if I got permission from the Scouts leaders to tape the recording. He also asked me if I knew that my son is very lucky to be at Scouts. I also contacted the head of the scouting group that I never previously knew was involved as a Scouts master. We played golf in a golf society, and he never mentioned this. He had no comment. Also along the way, I went to see the police, and their response was shocking. I have no idea if anything strange happened at Scouts or not. All I can say is that my gut feeling tells me there is something fishy going on. But as a minimum, I have the following questions. Number 1, why is my son at Scouts walking around church singing "This Little Light of Mine," and at a certain point in the song bending forward and wiggling his bum? Number 2, why did Scouting Ireland Child Protection Unit respond as they did by basically attacking me for asking legitimate questions about child safety? Number 3, why did the Scouts master that I played golf with and the police react as if I were the crazy one and that there is nothing wrong? What is the way forward with group events? This is a no-brainer as far as halls are concerned. There should be videos that parents can access for the full duration of their child being there. When kids go out for activities, they should have an armband with an app on the parent's phone that they can listen to at any time. Please come up with better solutions to keep your child safe. I recall guesses that the percentage of paedophiles is 3% of society. I have no clue if this is correct or not. One thing is for sure, and this is that paedophiles come from all walks of life. And now for my final remark. Why do I have to ask my family to excuse me from making this documentary? Is it not up to the 97% of society that are not paedophiles to make sure for their sakes that parents can be completely satisfied? Surely it is up to the 97% of non-paedophiles to implement these protective measures, and for those giving their valuable time to work in the Scouts and other activities, the comfort that no finger can be pointed to them.